Right next to me. Introduce yourself.
What's up, guys? I'm Bobby Nuggz. I'm a journalist and an activist from here in New England. Can you hear me? Is it loud? Alright, I'll move it away a little bit.
You won't hear after
But
the
yeah,
music starts.
I'm a journalist and activist for the last 10 years here. I've dedicated most, if not all of my time to the cannabis community. I'm always fighting for patients' rights, covering different topics. Media is a huge, huge part of my life, from YouTube, product reviews, so a lot of my friends creating their own personal brands and public figure pages. I'm really looking forward to weighing in some of this knowledge here today.
How you doing? I'm Mike Shue, part of the Hellman Morning Show at WAAF, and I guess you call me an activist. I've been, trying to help out the best I can, being on the radio, letting people know about the decriminalization, legalization, medical marijuana, and for a long time. And over the years, of course, just using it for fun, but learning through that how important it is also as a medicine. So that's kind of my main focus now, and I work a lot with the New England Veterans Alliance, who's here today, and to help our veterans with PTSD or any kind of pain they're dealing with. And right now, the focus for me would be to get cannabis off Schedule 1 so that the VA can help the veterans get what they need for whatever they need cannabis for. But thank you for coming out today.
Good morning, my name is Mike Whiter. I am a United States Marine Corps veteran, an activist, and I'm a producer for Now This Week. So I do social-based videos that are educational and newsworthy. But my main focus is veterans and cannabis as well. Cannabis saved my life back in 2012, and I haven't shut up about it since then. And now I put out 3 videos a day on it. I get, a million views a week. So thanks for coming out.
All right, thanks for coming out.
It's a roundtable discussion. We moderate ourselves, but Steve's making me talk about myself more because he said my name and I thought that was cool. My name is Diane Fornbacher. I'm the publisher of LadyBud.com. We are not associated with the poached name Lady Bud's documentary, so if you see it, say something, because that's not cool. That wasn't founded by activists. LadyBud.com was born of all of my experiences. My first job was a freelance writer for High Times magazine in the mid to late 90s. But I've also consulted for the Dr. Oz show, which isn't as cool as it sounds because he's a total douche and he doesn't know what he's talking about half the time. So I've written for Good Morning America, and I've also consulted with or been quoted by Vice magazine, New York Times, etc. ad nauseum, but I do prefer independent media because I feel like it has more spirit to it. They also have more time for editing, although nobody's perfect. And I've done a lot of redirecting because after a while, during the sort of nascent enthusiasm and the trending of cannabis, which is necessary for the normalization, I have gotten sick of my family's privacy being invaded, and we've made so much news that it's really not about me as an individual, it's about the many people who can also step up and contribute in order to continue normalizing it. So my function these days is to really just give a lot of other people strength to their stories and also the protection of community, because the more knowledge people have about you, the more that they'll protect you instead of being an anonymous person who doesn't deserve it just as much as someone who speaks out, but you do have more protection, and that's super important. So, thanks.
Yeah, I'm Steve Bloom. I've been coming to this event for about 30 years, I'm trying to think back, 93, 94, almost every year except for 9/11 and 2 years ago. My mother died, I didn't come up. Every year, it's amazing to see the changes that have happened here over time. They used to arrest a lot of people here. Cusick and Q-Strop got arrested here. At the High Times booth. I mean, things have changed so dramatically. So that's what blows me away coming up here every year to see how things have changed. For me, I used to work for High Times, and that's where I got my start as a journalist in the marijuana world. Before that, I was a entertainment journalist, a music journalist. I kind of found my way to High Times through a friend and ended up there, and I was sort of shocked by what I learned. the amount of people were getting arrested. Living in New York, we didn't really have a lot of problems around marijuana arrests growing up in the 70s because it was decriminalized and it worked. But as time went on, they found a loophole in the law and they started arresting people in New York to catastrophic levels. But anyway, I covered the news at High Times and then veered off into doing more music and celebrity entertainment coverage for the magazine. A lot of fun, covers with Snoop Dogg and Willie Nelson and, kind of legendary, photo shoots and all that kind of fun stuff. I did that for almost 15 or 20 years. And my time, I did it at High Times a few years ago, and I went off and started a website like Diane did Ladybud. I did Celebstona, and we kind of went into the new world of the web, after print, was sort of dying down a little bit, and learned that whole language of the web and how to publish, and still do it today. And my latest thing is Freedomly. You'll see magazines over there. I've been working for Freedomly for the last 4 years. I'm editor-in-chief of the magazine. I do pretty much what I do at High Times, a little less celebrity focused, but there's always, cannabis culture in the magazine, but it's kind of focusing on issues of what's happening exactly at the moment right now, whatever people are talking about, thinking about, we're on it. Right now, the main issue we have out now is called, it's a voting issue, and we were really encouraging people to focus on the initiatives that are happening around the country that will legalize marijuana for states for either medical or recreational, heading on to more legalization, keeping things going, following everything that's happening in the marijuana world, which is tough. There's so much going on, right? So we do the best that I can focusing on that, and also do freedomly.com as well. That's sort of our daily updates on the website. That's what I've been up to for the last 30 years.
I think it's important while we're up here that we weigh on in some of these catalysts of the changes we're talking about here. For me, social media has been a huge key for any part of my success in networking and all of this business. Before this was an industry, it was a movement. Social media was my entryway into public speaking, into journalism, into everything like that. I really feel it's important that we talk about all the influencer pages on Instagram and Facebook being deleted. I also feel it's important for us to talk about cannabis coming into a mainstream light, and businesses who pay taxes right now, they're being denied the privilege of having Facebook ads on social media, and among other things like working with the banks and stuff. I really feel like social media is going to be the vehicle that carries our plant into the mainstream light. And I feel like another thing is, like we were saying, the music culture has made cannabis multicultural, in my opinion. And hip hop has really carried us to a new pinnacle point, I feel, in a lot of ways. Some people may not agree with all of that, but because of the social media age and Instagram and everything else like that, it's really aiding in the way that we portray our information across on a daily basis. Would you guys like to weigh on that a little more? Some of the catalysts to this change we see?
All I want to say is thank God for the fucking Chronic album. I'm just saying, because when I was busted for pot, I was like, well, Dre's cool with it, so it's only a matter of time. But one of the things that was really important is, culturally, hip hop and rap has been very open about it because they were going to be victimized anyway. So we were just like, you know what, fuck you, and stuck their chins out, and we're like, we're just going to rap about our lives, and it's going to be really successful. Now, a lot of times they would pose with High Times, but when we would ask different people, like, I was very inspired by Erica Badu's Baduism, but when we asked her when I became an adult as opposed to a young, 20-something, late teenager, just listening to her, I felt like, her music was very helpful to me as an activist and spiritually too. But when we did the Normal Women's Alliance, we actually asked her to do events with us, and she declined because, a lot of people don't want to be the savior of pot, and when you I've heard this from a lot of people, not just musicians, but, celebrities, as well as people in overall drug policy. When you ask them to do something about cannabis, they all consume it or medicate with it, but they don't want to speak for it because they don't want to be known as the pot person. Nowadays, everybody's a fucking pot star, and the real star of pot is weed. Not you, not anybody, but weed. So that's one of the things I really think that people are making a mistake about. Just because it's trending doesn't mean, you're the one who invented it. just want to put that out there.
You want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, sorry I got on late. I'm Bobby Black, former senior editor of High Times, former SoCal editor of Sensi, former West Coast editor. You guys are talking about music? Is that what you're talking about, music and yeah, I mean, obviously there are the touchstones, over the years, Cheech and Chong and all those things. I know Bloom can attest. For me, I was a metalhead, I was a rocker guy, and it meant a lot to me. Obviously, most of the great rock bands in history used cannabis. There's, you've written about many times, Paul McCartney and Dylan, all these guys. But for me, what really was like with Pantera, you're talking about artists that wouldn't come out for weed, even though they used it or whatever. No, but back in the day, Pantera and Sebastian Bach, there were a few rock artists that really embraced it and came out. Obviously, Cypress Hill in the hip hop community. Black Crowes did as well. They had pot leaf merchandise, and they really came out, and that meant a lot to me. Seeing people willing to do that, and I always used to say, we know that so many people use cannabis, and if everyone who used it just came out at once, there'd be nothing they could do. It's the fact that people were so scared of what the social implications might be. And even to this day, even though now it's so accepted, there's still, in certain areas, there's still some weird stigma attached to it. For instance, like when I worked at Sensi Mag, High Times did something on one end of the spectrum, which was they had what they call, bud porn, like the big centerfolds of the buds and the plants, and people love that. Consumers love that. Like you said, the star is the plant. But when I worked at Cincy, they wanted to go the other direction because they wanted to appeal to the soccer moms and the grandmas who were medi-curious and stuff. And so they were like, we don't want any pictures of cannabis in the magazine. And I'm like, okay, but you're a cannabis magazine. I understand not wanting the dabbing and the booty booth babes and all that kind of stuff, and even the nug porn, But the plant, you can't put a picture of the plant in. You can't put someone just smoking a joint like that. I thought was a little too far,
Just to comment on that a little bit, would it be just maybe not? It would be less of a shock to the mainstream. We talk about trying to make it mainstream. And a lot of people want things to happen right away, but I believe that it's going to take a long time. And it's becoming legal recreationally in a lot of states, but at the same time, there's still a lot of people, legal-ish, but there's still a lot of, like half legal, I guess we could say. But there's still a lot of people that are very much against that. Being surrounded by people in the cannabis community, I never knew that until I went to my first outreach meeting for a dispensary where I live in Worcester, and 99% of the people there were against a dispensary opening up in the neighborhood. And it was, well, that's the thing, it was going to open up across the street from a liquor store, which I thought was ridiculous because alcohol kills more people in this country than a lot of things. But I think that the whole thing about not being able to include the picture of the plant, to me, that we have to take baby steps. And I know you're denying it's a plant. How can we deny that? But for the people in the mainstream to accept it more, I think that they have to see it as watered down and mainstream. And something else I want to throw out there to all of you. Do you think there is a perception problem? Like you mentioned Cheech and Chong, who I call the founding fathers, who I'm a huge fan. But do people still see that and say it's just a party drug? They don't want to look into it further as a medicine or anything like that. So do you think that cannabis at this juncture still has a huge perception problem as like the which is to me isn't wrong, but the hacky sack, dread guy kind of thing that the soccer moms will look at and go, oh, this is totally not in my field.
One of the reasons we started Normal Women's Alliance was because not only is Normal a bunch of old white dudes, no offense, Steve, but we wanted cannabis is sort of mainstream that. So about 10 or so years ago, there was this phenomenon called stiletto stoners. Personally, I have osteoarthritis. I'll wear knee-highs or thigh-high boots, but they have to be flats because it hurts to be sexy sometimes, and it's unrealistic. But we sort of jumped on the stiletto stoner thing with a blog called Pot Couture. They bailed eventually because their boyfriends were against legalization too and didn't think it was cool or good for their futures. So they dropped that website. But before they did that, they had a photo shoot in Brooklyn that was pretty well funded by some celebrity photographers, and we did a campaign which was kind of like a shot heard around the world kind of thing. And next thing you know, we were just deluged with, oh my gosh, girls smoke pot. We've been smoking pot for a millennia. Like I'm not 1,000 years old, but America, United States didn't invent weed. It is and has been multicultural. It has been international. It is a very, very old plant, and it needed our help because humans interfered with its access, not because it was bad or anything. But that was one of those things, like pot moms became really big. I got interviewed a million times over, and if you're interviewed by an aggregate news source, which means like a mainstream news source like CNN and Fox or whatever, then it aggregates to all of their local stations. It becomes like a lead-in story because it's trending and it's popular. So it's news at the top of the hour, and then so if within that week you looked up that one story, but you looked up a name and you said something like Diane Fornbacher, Pot Mom, Texas, even though I was interviewed in Philadelphia, it would have been like everywhere. So that's one of the things that we've seen kind of recently that hadn't been done before, but it's not like the first time it's ever been done. You know what I'm saying? Timing me?
I think there's sort of a tug of war going on in the cannabis world between the old school, people who help build legalization, and the new people coming in who don't really relate to the tie-dye guy in the back, Sean. They just think that's the problem. We've always been dealing with that even within our own movement. Normal didn't like the hippies coming in and hippies and this and that, and everybody doesn't always get along. But now we're at a point where cannabis is good, marijuana is bad, CBD is good, THC is bad. So we're at this point where what's really going on here and sort of the cleaning up of the old image of marijuana, and is it really necessary?
Do we think maybe like the infighting is a bigger part of the problem? Like, hey, it's not marijuana, it's cannabis, or it's not.
Well, that's just a semantic old discussion, but it's great on Facebook, and I've pointed out occasionally that I like to use all the terms for marijuana. As an editor, it's nice to have all the terms instead of just saying cannabis. But I am leaning more towards cannabis. People are swinging me. It sounds good a lot of times.
Well, as you say, we really are reaching a new pinnacle point in this, and it's all about, I feel, putting across relatable information and content as much as we possibly can. And something up here that I don't think has been mentioned yet is the multimedia thing. Photography, radio, there's so many different ways for us to change this perception issue we are seeing right now in the cannabis community. Me saying we need to cater to the media and give the people what they want sometimes can come back around to bite us in the ass in a lot of ways, because there are some pages out there who draw tons, if not more attention than anybody by acting a fool. To me, I'd rather choose a different route.
Other people too. That happens so much in the meme sort of culture.
It took control.
One of the things that's really cool is Now This, those short snippets. Mike's the producer at Now This. You may see other similar things like ATTN, where that has like the short videos, and it's under like 35 seconds, but it's a whole news story. And I think that that's really helpful too, because a lot of times, if you can't connect to people with their faces, their movements, then hear their voices, or see them in their own homes, then it's not normalized. And one of the things that we've seen in the past with regard to cannabis media and the mainstream is that they have dirty fingernails that look like they've just rolled out of bed, and we've seen that for decades. Like all the questions that you're asking and all the things that are being brought up aren't questions that haven't been asked 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40, 60, 70 years ago, because the drug war's been active for that long. And one of the things I'm really glad to see is that they're no longer hitting metal pipes with like the clay middles. I mean, I used to scrape those out with an X-Acto knife myself when I was a freshman. Okay, I smoked some metal shavings because we couldn't find any weeds, and that's all we had. But having that in pictures sort of speaks to the bias against cannabis users, saying they're only like dirty, they're only like homeless and greasy, and it's not true. The great thing about cannabis is it is for everyone. and everyone should have it. So the representation that, you know, you're dirty, you belong in the gutter, and you're useless and hopeless, and all you're going to do is hard drugs after that is incorrect. So I'm glad to see that there's a lot of representation, but I also think a lot of people are taking ownership of it, which I actually don't like. You know, you can use cannabis, but, you know, this holier-than-thou attitude, in which I was complicit for media and normalization purposes, but I want to state emphatically that I never will be normal. I never aspired to be normal, but I wanted to be free, and that's why a lot of us became activists and stepped into a realm of normalcy where we didn't have any business and want to be left the fuck alone.
Yeah, taking what you guys, Steve and Diane, what you guys just said, I think cannabis is big enough for everyone. You don't have to disown the dealers and the growers and the hippies of the past to make room for the new people that are entering it. You don't have to disown it. You don't have to put it down. I'm so tired of reading in magazines, like especially the cannabis business magazines, where like, this is not the Cheech and Chong tie-dye, we're better than that. And it's like, no, you're not better than that, because if it wasn't for those Cheech and Chong tie-dye people, you wouldn't have a freaking business right now.
The Labrador strain is the best strain.
Yeah, I mean, it was the people who put their necks on the line, the outlaws and the growers and the dealers for decades and decades, and the activists, the people fighting for this. They're the reason that you're making millions of dollars now. They're the reason that all these people are entering the market and the awareness is where it is. So to demonize it or put it down and say we need to leave that in the past, I think is a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, hooray.
And I find it personally offensive because those are people are me and my friends.
Who kept those strains alive when it was unpopular and dangerous? Farmers.
Hey, do media outlets, are they able to grab the whole market, or do you think that the way media outlets are now, they have to find their segment and really bow down to what that segment is? Is it possible to take in our old clan and bring the rest of the world in, or?
Well, that's what we're trying to do. I mean, Mike's involved in mainstream media now. Now this is like, you know, really popular sort of virus
It's very
thing.
target audience when you go to mainstream media.
Well, he's been covered and makes the news, and they actually made him look bad on Fox News in Philly, which was really a really shitty thing for them to
So
do.
are you able to play to both sides of being media or in the media to work both sides?
I try to, as much as I can, be fair. You know, like report both sides. You know, I did a piece on like that cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, right? Which I really didn't want to put my name at the end of, but had to. And it was news. You know what I mean? Like, you got to cover the news, no matter whether it's good or bad, right? And I think it's our duty to be fair, and not. I'm biased towards the plant. I mean, it saved my life, absolutely. But I also know that not everything is peaches and cream. You know what I mean? Like, there are some bad things. Like, it can be abused, etc. You know, it's not all good. But you know, you kind of have to be fair about that, and not.
Yeah, we're talking about there's different sides. There's the old school hippie type guy. There's the people that have been smoking for years, and then there's this large market that everyone knows that's 90% of the country that hasn't even entered the market yet. As a media outlet, are you able to service the new people without alienating the old people? Is that a possible thing?
I mean, that's a great question for High Times.
That is.
You know, it turns out that, you know, both Rob
He
and
comes from word
Bobby
processing,
and
Wheatland.
we both worked there, so we, you know, but I'm not there anymore. How did they deal with that? Because a lot of people tag High Times as being kind of that stoner mag, and they're looking ahead to some sort of thing that's maybe a little bit more like Sensi. You know, that's a real wide, like Robbie said, there's a real wide gap between those types of publications. So there is room for the niches. I mean, Freedom Leaf has its own niche too. It's not grow-oriented. I strictly decide go grow. Maybe a couple of pictures once in a while, because that's what High Times does and Cannabis Town does. Why repeat that? Let's find some other little niche in there that people want to dig into the real nitty-gritty news of what's happening in the world of cannabis. You know, with a little fun cultural stuff built into the back. I'm always going to add a music review, you know that. You know.
One of the things I always really liked about High Times is that they didn't just focus on cannabis, that they had a really virulent and strong news team, which is the team that I got to know first. And back in the day, they covered a lot of the drug war in Colombia and spraying paraquat on coca plants and poisoning the farmers, their families, as well as the end market users in the United States. And so at Ladybug, what we try to do is we also try to incorporate like things that we like that have nothing to do with cannabis. And that's part of the normalization process. We don't always have to bring up, like, I have a Badger weed. Well, guess what? I also read books by Margaret Atwood. We'll just cover that book if she doesn't mention weed once, because we are just people, and people use cannabis and people don't use cannabis. But with regard to media outlets not leaving people behind, I've been going over this in my head, and I didn't want to insult Steve, but he comes from like the word processor land and typewriters, and I come from like really, crappy computers with no internet connection that we had to put on a disc and submit to our editors, and then it would go to print on actual paper, and then the internet came, and I remember working for the Center Daily Times, which was owned by a major newspaper owner, and they eventually fired me during a weekly because I was open about the drug war and trying to educate people about harm reduction so they wouldn't fucking overdose and die and not finish college, and so one of those things that has really changed throughout time is not just the technology. And on this spectrum, you've got like Bobby, who has been printed in paper but also utilizes new media, and then you've got the two mics over here who are also involved in the media in sort of like a newer era, but they're also around the same age, I'm assuming, as I am, and that has helped us all kind of see this spectrum from like just paper to like dial-up to high speed to the 24-hour news cycle, which is incredibly hard, and the voracious appetite of mainstream media leaves a lot of room for a lot of people to speak up and be covered as well. Sometimes not to great effect, but for the most part, yes, or we wouldn't be where we are today. So
if I could address as being in the mainstream media, radio and television have federal licenses to broadcast, so that kind of puts handcuffs on us on how we can talk about cannabis. So for instance, at WAAF anyway, we can't promote consumption, like we couldn't promote a dispensary, we can't promote the sale, we can't tell people how to grow it or anything like that. But we can cover an event like this because it's educational, or a convention like CannaCon or any of the NECAN conventions or something like that. So it kind of puts a restriction on what I can do, even if I'm blogging, because my name is associated with the company. So my company's very nervous about that line, and where do you cross it, and is the federal government going to come after us and our FCC license because it's still on a Schedule I drug. Maybe not so much like a smaller station or a college station, but the bigger wattage stations will get more scrutiny on that. So it's very difficult to get the message out as far as my job is concerned because of that restriction.
When is truth not true? InfoWars.
That's obvious.
What's the question, sir?
How does Fox get an FCC license?
It's a little beyond the scope of this.
I really think it comes down to moral ethics. Follow the news sources that you know are credible and you want to hear from, and you think put out the most credible news and sources. Don't pay attention to that phony shit. It's just gonna get you all confused.
So a quick Google search will save you from sharing fake news. Seriously, like Google something and look for a verifiable source. You know what I mean? Like, don't just share a freaking meme and say, oh, well, this is what happened, without Googling it first and fact checking it yourself, because it's seriously that easy to fact check something. It takes an extra 5 seconds.
I just want to respond to something that Bobby said earlier about social media, and we are hampered as websites, in the social media world, or on the web, or Google. Google won't accept our ad. We can't take Google ads. I've been banned from Google ads. I've been banned from Google Plus for years. Who cares? But I was, But what if Facebook had banned me? Then I would be in trouble, so to speak, to get the traffic that we need. So they
We have really great SEO through Google, but they won't let us advertise. I'm like,
no
make your
advertising.
fucking mind.
I mean, I can imagine, a certain amount of revenue streams that I would have had through Celeb Stoner for all those years that I didn't have, that other companies would. So things like that, and of course the Facebook stuff. I never really run into it. I was shut down by PayPal once for using some kind of web address, some kind of email address with marijuana in it, I guess. You have to kind of work around it and realize, okay, I got back on there with another email address, another bank account, and I just figured my way around it, but I was out for a while.
It's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, it is. So we all deal with that stuff that's been ongoing, making it very hard to make a living on the web.
Facebook and social media in general are hard to figure out because they pick and choose what they let you monetize and what they don't let you monetize. So, even we have like a partnership with Facebook, and we still have a hard time with some videos. But yeah, social media is changing the game. It really is, like Bobby said earlier. Americans have a short attention span, and you gotta cater to that shit.
We gotta wrap it up, but back in the day, one story would last us like 6 months to a year because I was working the mainstream media side as well as the advocacy side, and because the internet wasn't available to most people, they didn't make the connection and fire me until much, much later than they otherwise would have. But social media has taken the movement from like 0 to fucking 1,000 miles per hour. So I mean, it's a lot different than it was, all of us old people to the left of me, myself included. So thanks, Zuckerberg.
Just FYI, we're all going to move over to the networking tent for some questions and some chilling. So if you want to come over and network with us, ask us some personal questions, feel free. Let's smoke a joint, take a dab. Happy Freedom Rally. Thanks for listening to us, guys.
Yeah, please pick up copies of Freedom Leaf over on the table. Everybody walk away with the Freedom Leaf. Thank you.